not sure. It's different.
It or just let it slip?
Do you not know me at all? I mean, Dennis, that's your line, I know, but I'm capturing it right now. We are live on location at Taco Tuesdays in Delray Beach, Florida, to celebrate a couple of things, right? With live audience, we've got celebrating the 19th hole of season 5 and our first anniversary on the back nine.
1 year, baby. We did it. We made it 1 year.
A full year.
And we captured it. We did it.
We did. We didn't let it slip.
You did know that was Eminem, right?
I did. For what you were referencing, yes, I did. But I'm not a big
palms are sweaty, weeks,
guy,
arms are heavy.
Hop. Yeah.
He's got his vomit on his sweater already. Mom spaghetti. Sorry.
Yeah, that's good for year one.
Yeah.
But energy is different, right? I mean, normally we're in a kind of a lovely but sterile environment when we're doing the podcast. It's just you and me and Janine normally.
Right.
But tonight we have a live audience. You can hear them in the background. It's outstanding to be
Great
here.
looking audience. There's like 150 people here. We can say that because nobody can actually see the camera from the audience. I might be exaggerating just a little bit.
But not that much. Not that much. And so the energy is different. So it's going to take a little bit of getting used to. Maybe most importantly, Dennis, here as we wrap up season 5, this is the first time that we have been together since your wedding. Now, we recorded a couple of things in advance and we pretended like that was the case. But this is really the first time that we've done this and recorded since the wedding. So how are you feeling?
I'm feeling
now?
great. First of all, we're wearing the shirts that you got us, the back nine wedding.
Yep.
11/17/24. You know, I'm feeling great. The wedding was tremendous. It was the perfect back nine wedding. You know, we had the great crowd.
Fantastic.
And I will say, as you know, we pivoted a little bit. It rained.
It rained
like really hard.
Ridiculously hard. Like it never rains like that.
Like never. Right. And so it turned our actual ceremony into like a tropical rainforest with this gazebo, the whole beach plan. But let me tell you what was great about it. And my youngest daughter picked up on this.
Yep.
She said it was perfect for you guys because that's your whole story. You guys, you know, ups and downs, you get through a lot, you survive a lot. She was way more articulate than I'm being right now. But anyway, she was very like adamant about the fact that this was perfect for you guys. And I will tell you, she's here tonight.
Yes.
My bride, like Rebecca, was, you know, even the photographer said, you know, most people would have been a bridezilla, like broke down because of everything.
She was totally easy.
Totally cool. Yeah. Rolled with it. And it was like, that's just a perfect microcosm of our relationship. We just roll with stuff. Like it's why we have fit so well together, is because you know the ups and downs that we've had in our relationship, like not
relationships in general. Yeah.
The ups and downs that we've had, you know, different things with my health and her situation, some friends and different people that have been in and out of our lives. You know, there's been some ups and downs, and we survived it all. So it made sense for it to be like, you guys will get through this.
Yeah. And then we had, the glorious day, the great night, and the glorious day the next day.
I think you called it perfect. Like you said somebody said
perfect. It was idyllic.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
We took a charter, everyone in the wedding party, and we went to the British Virgin Islands where I'd never been. And that was just phenomenal.
Joost Van Dyke,
and we checked in at Tortola. And then we saw 3 different sunsets, because when you're coming back, the sun, as you're maneuvering around the islands, the sun set over different islands each time, and then you'd pick it up again. That was terrific. In the last thing you just said, you said your bride, my bride, Rebecca. Have you gotten used to calling her your bride? Is it weird to hear her call you her husband if you do?
it just seems natural because like girlfriend, like that's just
Yeah.
seems like they're.
It's odd for this stage of life
Well,
to
I've
refer to
always
somebody
said,
as a
I guess you
girlfriend or a
get
boyfriend.
fiance for a little while, but I've
Yeah.
always said there should be something in the middle because,
Right.
because it's like girlfriend to married. Like
Yeah.
it's just
Well, and then there's, you can say at this stage of life, if you don't like girl or boy because we're older than that, significant other. I mean, that
Yeah.
seems formal or SO or something.
my partner?
Sassy. Partner is
my
ridiculous because then,
partner.
you know,
Yeah.
partner implies maybe something else. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it just, you know, if they don't know.
Yeah.
So
Is our first guest ready? Janine's here, by the way.
So that's, yeah,
Oh,
Janine
there
and
he
Roy
is.
are here.
So
as
here's
always.
the thing.
Yep.
Unbelievable that our very first guest of our first season a year ago was this guy, Eric Goodman.
Yes.
We did a whole show on dating after divorce. At the time, I'm going to try to get this right. You were the last one to split, first one to get married. I was the first one to split, second one to get married. Josh is now just right in the middle.
Yeah,
just right in the
I'm
middle,
of
Eric.
everything.
So we're sitting there. But yeah, I joined the ranks of the married now with you. And thank you. Yeah, thank you, Eric, for setting that up for me, showing me the way. Your wedding was beautiful. Yeah, it was good to have you on, man. How you been?
Good, Josh. Do you have an announcement to make about what you're going to be doing?
I do not.
Marty isn't expecting any news on this
I don't-
one-year anniversary
She's
show.
about 20 yards away from me right now, maybe 20 feet away from me. But no,
I think she's
that's
not paying attention.
Yeah.
She's shaking her head like, please no. Please
That's
no.
right. She's like putting her fingers in a cross position. Stay away, devil.
So I should say, Eric, your episode remains the most downloaded episode that we had. And
Really?
Yes.
yeah, I mean, and I think the dating after divorce title does a lot for that. And the fact that you were able to articulate so well the path that you took. And, you know, we might have helped you through it a little bit back then. But just, I mean, not everybody listens to every episode. So I know you've been married for a little while, but give us your top dating advice. Just give us like a couple nuggets for our audience that are maybe going through divorce on the back nine.
Yeah, has it changed at all?
Trying
since
to
we were
figure
with
out,
you?
has your advice changed in a year?
No, not really. And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, when I literally signed my divorce papers in Las Vegas, Josh, you were standing next to me. Is that right?
I was, yes, and Dennis was
the
on the
witness.
way.
I was on the way. I was on plane
Right.
to come see you. So
So everything is full circle. And ironically, Josh, you officiated the wedding as well.
I did.
My wedding to Mandy, and hopefully it's the last one. I don't know if my dating advice has really changed because I haven't dated in close to 7 years. So I'm not sure how things work now.
7 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Wow. But your story's great. I mean, the way that you went on the dating apps and then just found the one. And I remember when you called me, like you knew.
I mean, for me, for a first date, and I talked about it on your first episode a year ago. Like a lot of guys will talk about themselves to impress the woman. And women, not in general, but some women on dates feel like they are not being heard, right? So the guy's talking, I drive this car and I do this job and so much money I make. I always took a complete opposite approach, which was I want to get to know them. And women used to say to me, I feel like you're interviewing me. And I'm not trying to turn it into an interview, but I want to get to know them. I want to follow up with questions because I'm thinking, do I want to take them on a second date?
Right.
And that was my whole process behind it. And then the added sweetener to it was they felt like they were being heard, which clearly they were, because I wanted to hear what they had to say.
And Eric, I think, given your background and even one of your current occupations, as a sports radio host, it's maybe a little bit natural to kind of fall into that pattern of an interview, as it was for all of us when we did that.
Yeah.
It is actually exactly a year ago, this party, and when your first episode dropped. We had recorded it in advance, but it was December 5th of 2023 when it dropped. You've now heard at least some of the episodes in our podcast. Given that perspective, and we were with that first episode, we were really just finding our voice. I think the podcast has evolved.
Yeah, thanks
a
for
little
carrying
bit,
us.
but you did carry us for
How
sure.
about that?
How do you feel that that advice fits into how the podcast has evolved, or what is your perspective now on the advice that you gave then and the advice that you kind of reiterated now as it fits in with the general theme of, winning in middle-aged life?
I think that the segment that we did together is an important segment, because I'm guessing there are more than a few people that are loyal followers, hundreds, thousands, whatever it is, have been through a divorce, right? They've been through a divorce. So
or thinking about it.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So,
right?
yeah. So I think they're in a situation where they got to get back into the dating scene. When we were younger, when we were all working in Buffalo together, the internet back in, at least for me, back in 1994, 95, 96, when I was in Buffalo and we were there all roughly at the same time, we certainly overlapped. There was no real internet dating back then. There certainly wasn't any type of swiping. I can't even remember if cell phones even had, monitors where you can swipe like that. They were, flip phones, right? Yeah. So things changed for all of us dramatically. With the dating has changed because of technology as much as anything else. So for me, jumping back in the dating scene, that was a whole new world to me, and learning how to acclimate. Back then, when we were in Buffalo, you met a girl in a bar, right? Yeah. Or maybe you're introduced to somebody else. So technology has changed everything on so many different levels.
Well, let me ask a question of both of you, because you're both married now. Has marriage changed because of technology?
Yes. I would say yes, for this reason alone. Your wife is on her phone a lot. Sometimes I'm on my phone a little bit too much, right? And how many times have you sat on the couch together, Dennis and Beck, and you've been together for a long time, where the two of you sit on the couch together, TV on or off, and you're both on your phones, and there's zero communication, unless you want to show her a funny video on Instagram. I'm not saying that's your relationship.
No, I get it.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of relationships.
It's definitely changed things. I think there's things that are positive, though. I think we have, way more pictures. Like, I think that's a good thing. I think we share a lot of things like that. I think there's, there's some things we're able to communicate better. Like, here's where I am. Here's what I'm doing. What do you need me to pick up? Like it's a little, there's a lot of things that are helpful. But I agree with you. I have to be conscious about it, especially because, a lot of mine is not, and I'm sure it's the same with you guys. A lot of mine is not just like messing around online. It makes me work too much, makes me answer emails when I shouldn't be answering emails. And a lot of it is not just like scrolling Instagram or on Reels. It's that too. It's like, how do I compartmentalize the work part of it as well? Because work's in your hand 24/7 when you're not sleeping. So that's the issue that I battle all the time.
And here is something else as well. So before I joined you guys, I am on three things, and that, well, besides my email, and like you, Dennis, and like you, Josh, I'm working all the time. I will pop onto three apps. I will pop onto LinkedIn just to see if I have any messages, but I'm on there very infrequently. I go to Instagram, and I do my auctioneering business off of Instagram to see if anything's there, but I do enjoy looking at Reels. I do enjoy looking at funny videos and things like that. And one way that I communicate with Mandy is if I see something funny and it makes me think of us, I will send it to her.
Yeah,
she has things where, there are phrases about couples and, whether it is how much I love you, or it is, let's say we're having a disagreement and there's something about, having disagreements, and she sends that to me. That's just another form of communication. But the truth is, with phones in general, there is less verbal communication.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I'm pretty sure I get a Frenchie video almost every day. A video of a Frenchie, like a funny video. It's funny, but pretty sure every day I get she can't hear me right now, but that's for sure. Hey, Eric, one more thing I wanted to thank you for. Not only were you our first guest, you were the first person to be a sponsor for us. And thank you to Goodman Global. That's your other business, your auctioneering business. You are one of the best, if not the best in the country. I know that's your love, that's your passion. You love doing it. But thank you for both of us for stepping up and, sponsoring us at the beginning. So We appreciate that. We appreciate you as a friend. You've been by our side for a long time, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, and coming back in. Can I ask one more question before you go?
I got all the time you need. But
Okay,
you have
so
other important guests.
we
By
have-
the way, as a side note, your lists of guests have been very impressive. Like for me to be you shot up like a rocket after me with the amount of really good guests that you have gotten on so many different topics. I commend both of you for being creative in keeping the show fresh, where it's not, your show is not, is a Venn diagram in some ways, but there isn't enough crossover where it feels like you're doubling up on a topic.
Thank you for that. Well, it's been great to have you. We have some of those guests are here. They're going to join us again tonight. But as always, Eric, you lead off. You set the table. We're incredibly grateful for that, and thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Love to Mandy and the girls, and we'll see you soon, bud.
Guys, congratulations on your success. I cannot say that any more insincerely.
As always, Eric, thanks, bud. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Eric. We appreciate you very, very much. So, it's important to point out too, for those who are watching this or listening to us for the first time, this show is a metaphor. It's about the back nine of life. And, we are golfers, but this is not about golf. We often say that there's a front nine of life and a back nine of life, and back nine, the turn is basically midlife. And none of us know what hole we're on in the back nine, but we're all trying to figure that out and navigate and live our best life on the back nine. So that's a big part of what we're doing.
And as we get ready to bring our next guests up here in a minute or two here, you're right. And it's amazing how as we've approached this first anniversary, Dennis, how many references to the back nine. I was listening to a couple of other podcasts where a nationally renowned podcast host named Scott Galloway made the reference twice. In the rest stop on the drive down here today, there was a video that was talking about a great vacation, and it counted down from 9 to 1, and it was the back nine. So it is a metaphor that has a lot of impact and meaning, and we've been able to tap into that in terms of winning in middle age. When we think about season 5, right? This is the 19th hole for season 5. What were the things that stood out to you about this season?
The diversity of guests. Some of the seasons had a lot of similarity in guests. I think in this one we had a lot of different folks, right? Kim Kerrigan was our first that was, had a great message about how, we often talk like we just did about divorce and second chances. Her first chance is her second chance. That's right. She's navigating all her friends getting divorced in a happy marriage, 35 years. So that was a great episode. I was moved by Tim Johnson, Pastor Tim Johnson. I thought he was absolutely tremendous, and his story and what he's doing in different prisons and things like that are all. It was awesome. He was terrific. And then Nick, my good buddy Nick Warner. I think what his message was also something we hadn't heard. He said his front nine prepared him for the back nine. What he did in business, what he did in his first career, prepared him to live his best life on the back nine. We hadn't really heard that, right? We had not heard somebody who really at a young age recognized investments, living lean, doing the right things to be able to be able to be prepared for the back nine.
We also had, I thought, two other things stood out to me. Number one, we bookended it at the front and at the back with talking about pivots, right? We had Craig Can on at the beginning, and that was kind of talking about professional pivots. He's a guy who went from working in broadcasting and at the Golf Channel to being the chief communications officer for the LPGA to now starting his own business, Can Consulting, where he is knocking it out of the park. And he talked about all of the steps and the ups and downs of the professional pivot. We closed the season with Matt Galluli talking about life pivots and the big moments in our lives when things change. And how we have several of them and how to get through those personally.
Right.
The other thing that stood out to me about the season was our surprise guest.
Yeah, I was going to say
that is a carryover. And we had a hockey legend in Rob Ray, and we had an LPGA, maybe a GOAT,
Definitely the GOAT.
Hall of Famer for sure, and Annika Sorenstam. And so that is something that we want to carry over because I think it was fun to have those surprises.
Right, and we both got decent names. I mean, Annika was incredible to get that big of a name was awesome, and then somebody like Rob, who has such a great story of his playing career, and just an iconic person in a town that you and I spent a lot of time in Buffalo, and Buffalo seems to weave its way into this. Into our show a lot.
It does. We have some connections
Go Bills.
There, yeah. Okay, so now let's go back to season 4 because we have a couple of guests who are here from that who have joined us.
Do a costume change.
Yes, they have dressed up for us, which is great. We're in t-shirts, so we're gonna adjust our wardrobes here. It's at the very least it's long sleeves, so we'll do that in a second here. But joining us here on the dais, so to speak, making the drive down from Central Florida, one of our favorite new podcasts. We have a couple, the Tied for First, Insights from the Couch, our friends Laura Bowman and Colette Fair. Your podcast is spectacular. We love it. There's a lot of overlap between yours and ours, right? You're focused on mental wellness in middle age, and our focus is partly on that, but it's on overall wellness, especially for men, but not entirely. So you're a few months in as well. I'm going to try to not make noise as I put my sweatshirt on here, but you're a few months in. How is it going for you? Since you were with us, you were really just starting out, and you guys are getting such great momentum here going forward.
Thank you. And thanks for having us. We love your podcast too. We're so excited to be here with you all celebrating the 1-year anniversary. Ironically, or maybe not ironically, but interestingly, today is our 6-month anniversary from when we launched. Yep.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
We love your show. I mean, you guys do a lot. I think, again, we talked about this when we were on with you. Our shows really do parallel, and that's why you were literally at the top of the list. We got to get them on because our shows are so similar, and we need to keep this dialogue going because, I mean, you guys are helping people navigate the back nine of life. That's what you do but you don't just do it on your show. Like, we do it on our show for like an hour a week. You guys do it for 40 plus hours a week.
IRL.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I know. I read the description of your show to my husband, and they're like, "What do these guys do?" And so I read it, and he's like, "That's what you guys do." And I was like, yeah.
You do it professionally, though.
You guys,
we're just making suggestions here and there, right? Starting conversations.
You guys do a great job. And when you were on our podcast, the response was so wonderful. You were both so open and vulnerable. And I think not only does that make it interesting for the audience, but it really models what's possible, in particular for men, as we're all evolving, to be more open and have that kind of connectivity. It was really great.
So, what else did you take away? I mean, have you used anything like with men? Did we teach you anything? Like, I just want to like, or you guys already know it as professionals? Like, did you get any nuggets?
I mean, I think the way you guys just answered questions, we see that all the time. Like, nothing you guys said to us was surprising to hear.
Right.
No, but we hear it in the therapy room. What we don't often hear it is in other formats. And I think a lot of men are not out there having those conversations that you're having on your podcast and you had on ours, where you're opening up about your emotions and your relationships and being really honest and really real.
I guess the other flip side of that question is, did we say anything that you've heard that's wildly wrong? Like, oh God, that's terrible advice to them, right? Don't say that.
No.
My favorite thing was when Dennis talked about how vulnerable he felt when he was dating.
Yeah.
I was like, I felt that.
Yeah.
What's
That is how people feel.
What's
right?
interesting about that is it's a good tie into our first guest, Eric, because we all went through that at the same time. And Eric actually came to me after I had sort of learned that I was going to be okay with the same concern. So I was able to kind of get him through that as well, because I had been through it. Like, you're going to be fine. I know we're in our late 40s, but we're not done. There's a lot of runway left. But you don't know. I mean, it is so true. Like, it's good for us to, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's really good for us to remember that so many people, men and women, feel like they're toast, for lack of a better term, in their 40s, and that and that a divorce is going to just be the be all and end all. And it really, really can be the exact opposite.
Exactly.
It can be the second chance. I got married 2.5 weeks ago. It can be that, like, the dream. and the second
cool.
chance that you deserve. And
Right.
you know, and the one thing he also talked about, I think is important too, is it allows you to ask the right questions the second time and dive into the things that are going to be, I think you said it, the deal breakers, right? I think you said that. Yeah, Colette, you that's the thing you have to be able to set your boundaries.
Exactly.
Yes.
Set your boundaries. And I think there's so much negativity often that people associate with divorce, but you're absolutely right. It can sometimes be the best thing that happens to you. It doesn't mean it isn't a difficult transition, but it leads to a whole new life. And I think everyone, men and women, feel for a period of time right out of a divorce, am I going to be okay? Will I find love again? What is it going to be like in the back nine of life if I've lost my partner, especially coming out of a 20, 30-year marriage?
Yeah.
And then to discover that you're going to be okay, that is such a profound moment.
Right. What about the kids? You know, I got to see my girls are thriving, and they were so incredible at our wedding, and I'm so proud of my two kids, and they've made it on the other side of our situation, but that's not always the case. So what's your advice? And I guess it depends on ages. What's your advice to people out there? Because we can talk about ourselves surviving it, but you bring kids into it, it's a whole nother equation.
My advice, and I say this as somebody whose parents divorced when I was in college, I'm divorced with children. Make it as easy as possible for your children, no matter what you feel about your ex-spouse. No guilt, no burden on the children, never say a bad word. And so everybody has that idea in their mind. And some people say, oh, well, but this happened. No. Your kids, that is a part of their identity, that other parent. And even if that person has been reprehensible to you, you owe it to your child to speak of them in positive terms and make this transition as easy for them as possible.
Yeah, and I was a child of divorce multiple times over. And I think that one of the things I was annoyed by my own mother was her need to make me understand it all. And I would say that kids will get there in time, but you can't rush them. And if they're going to be angry, you let kids be.
Boy, that's so
Yeah,
important.
it really is. Let them feel
Let
it
them
all.
feel
Yeah, let
it
them
all.
feel it all.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to push your narrative on them prematurely.
Let's talk about your podcast for a little bit, because it has grown. We've watched it evolve. How have you felt it evolve? For me, I think about the episode the two episodes that you just dropped. One was the Christmas episode, talking about the holiday season, which was incredibly on point. So I want to hear your thoughts on that. And you also both went to a women's seminar, or at least Colette, you went to. Did you both
We
go?
went
You both
together.
went, okay.
The menopause conference.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which, you might think a largely male audience wouldn't necessarily be interested in hearing about that, except we should be. Whether we
Right.
are,
Yeah.
because these are things that our partners may be going through,
And
or
big
our
changes.
siblings may be going through, and it's going to change the way that we're interacting with you, because you're going to be different. So what were your takeaways from the conference beyond what you talked about, or maybe in addition to what you talked about in your podcast?
Just how we're really redefining what this stage of life looks like for women and their partners, if they're in heterosexual relationships, of course, that there's so much more understanding and awareness that life can really begin at that menopausal time. Your sex life doesn't have to tank. Your, muscular development doesn't have to tank. Your health doesn't have to go downhill. So many women have historically suffered without information, not understood why their libido is so low, or thought there's anything they could do about it. So it just felt very hopeful and very exciting that, I just turned 51, that this could be the beginning of like the most vibrant time of my life, instead of like, oh shit, I'm about to get old and start to die.
And these women were such badasses.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they were so alive and just
Powerful,
thriving.
smart, amazing.
And we keep saying it over and over, but none of them drink. And they just take
Wow.
such
Well, what do
great
you
care
make of
themselves.
that? What do you make of that? You talked about it a little bit on the podcast,
Yeah.
but go into more detail on that.
I make it mean that these people are serious about taking care of themselves and living really well.
Do you think that translates then into all of the other positives, more
Yes.
positivity and more active sex life, whatever it might be?
Yes. First of all,
Yes.
being present
Mm-hmm.
is when you're living your best. I mean, I say this as my wine sitting
I
over
know.
there.
Right.
So don't think I'm on a high
Dry
horse here.
January is coming.
But I went a year without drinking any alcohol, and it was not difficult. once I started, and I did feel the best I'd ever felt. And we do know that alcohol is a neurotoxin that contributes to cellular death. It poisons your organs. We are just so socially conditioned to poison ourselves and smile while we do it, right? So, but like I joked on
Cheers.
the
have a
let's
bottle
all
of
toast
Liquid
to that
bourbon
to
here.
poison. So it does make you think. If the experts, the leading experts worldwide in the field, have all cut this out of their lives, it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, I'm a little. I mean, I agree with that. If you're on the side of giving it up completely, great. I'm a moderation person because I was going through my divorce and through certain times in my life, I was a heavy drinker.
Yeah.
I was not. I was like probably a social alcoholic in some ways.
Yeah,
like every
yeah.
time I drank, I
It's a
drank
good
a lot.
phrase.
Yeah.
Every time I
I
drank,
love that.
every time I drank, I drank a lot. And I have like not quit, but it's complete moderation.
Yeah.
Like no more hangovers, no more like drinking until like am incoherent. So that's where I am, and I get that people want to cut it out completely, but I think the most important thing for us to preach, because it is so hard for people to cut it out completely.
It is.
And it also is for me. It is a social thing for me. I'm a very, very social person, and it's not that I can't have club soda, but
Right.
if I want to have a beer, I'm gonna have a beer. I'm gonna have a glass of wine, but I'm lucky because I can control it. I can have one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
rare.
And that's that, or two, whatever.
Right,
But that's it. Like, and I
Maybe
can
3.
stop.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe 3.
Sometimes
if
more.
it's my wedding weekend,
Right, well,
it
then
might
that's
be
fair.
more than
Yeah.
one.
That's different.
We'll
But you
just
have an
go with that.
offset.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Moderation is the key, right? As Aristotle says.
But
All good
it's
things
much
in
harder on
moderation.
women's bodies.
Yeah.
We got to be real.
Yeah.
It really is harder on a woman.
Yeah.
And we have to take even more impeccable care of ourselves.
And their message was there is no safe amount of alcohol.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I basically stopped.
Did you?
I did. In right before the pandemic started, and then I kind of leaned into it. And so
Yeah. Me too.
I
Me
will,
too. That's when I did
I
it.
will very rarely have a glass of wine on a celebratory occasion. At the wedding, I did kind of let those standards go,
That
but
seems right.
it was the Caribbean. How could you not? Right?
How could
so
you not?
I
How could you
just
not
I
have a
kind of leaned into
painkiller?
that a little bit. So going back to the podcast, what have you learned? We have found that we've learned a lot. What
Oh,
have
yeah,
you guys
so
learned
much.
in
Oh, my
6 months?
God.
What have we learned? Like podcast related.
Well, everything
Everything about
technical,
it. Yeah.
all the technical stuff.
oh my God,
I
that
mean,
we're both
a
really
learning curve
inept
of tech.
technologically.
We're the worst.
I've
the
learned
worst.
that I really love it. I really enjoy it. It is one thing, not that there aren't other things I'm doing professionally that I like, but it's one of the things I'm doing professionally that does not feel like work at all.
Right.
I enjoy it. I mean, we're such good friends. We've worked together for many years. It just feels fun and joyful and pretty effortless. Now, the technological part, not so much. We don't have these wonderful people here helping us.
We
so
could.
We do have you guys.
We
Could.
could.
Shout out to
But we
Janine
don't
and
live
Roy.
here.
Yeah.
Shout out.
We
exactly.
figured it
Shout
out
out to them.
though.
But I think just how much fun it is and how it is so gratifying to hear people say, thank you for sharing. I even sometimes am surprised at some of the stuff I've said. I look back or my husband will come home and be like, wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know that like little blowjob thing or whatever. And my mom's like, wow, Colette, I'm learning a lot about what you were doing in high school when I wasn't paying attention.
I think about that stuff all the time. And some
There
of
are
the
some
things I
cringy
say.
moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've met you in person, twice, maybe 3 times. I know you really, really well. That's great.
I know.
Right,
That's
right.
the only thing that's a
That's
little
the
like,
real you.
yeah, that's
It
the
is,
real
which
thing.
is
the
great.
real you. I love
That's
that.
the real
But we
you.
have great. We have great guests too.
Yeah.
We have some. You guys get this too, right?
Yeah.
You learn from people.
Yeah.
We have smart women that are having great careers and
Men.
But we.
Occasionally, yeah.
Yeah, you guys are a little bit of a token on our podcast, but
No, but it's true. We've had great guests
Great
and
guests.
we've learned a lot from their stories and their experience. And this is a forum that really allows you to dive into someone's story in such a unique
does.
way and share it. So I'm just really grateful and excited.
What I love about you as a pair too is, Laura, you talked about how you have a happy marriage, right? And you're doing great. Like you're thriving and you have the divorce story. So it's a nice combination. We had a guest and we've been talking a little more about the fact that one of the difficult things is being that couple that's happy together, watching everybody around you get divorced. Right. Like that. We had somebody on this season in season 5 that talked about that. And you almost need therapy for that.
Yeah, it can be very
right?
stressful.
Very
and scary.
stressful, and stressful on your relationship too. If one of you wants to be friends with one, and one of you wants to be friends with another, I mean, that's got to be substantial.
People feel like divorce is contagious.
It is. But we weren't close friends when you went through your divorce.
No, but we were very close friends before I got remarried.
Yeah.
I was right. We were friends while I was still single and dating before I met my husband.
Wow.
So, and it's always been about the connection and the rapport between us. Yeah.
So what's coming next for you guys with the podcast and everything else?
We have tons of guests lined up.
Yep.
That's so great.
Yeah. And we're also trying to really, even though mental health at midlife is our tagline, we really do look at it holistically. Your physical health, your career, your relationships, mental health issues like anxiety and depression. We want to be a holistic resource. And I think the most important thing is to have people on who are interesting to us, because if they're interesting to us, then they're interesting, hopefully, to other people who follow us, and have fun with it still.
Yeah, and we're here to empower women. Like, we're going to do a in-person group this year where we're going to, for women. So we're going to take all of this and really try to activate women at this age level.
Well, congratulations on your success over to this point.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming down.
We're so happy to be here.
Will we see you at Podfest as well?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes,
Yeah, we'll be there.
Okay,
we'll
so
be
we'll
there
have
together
to
then,
get
if not
together
before
for a drink or non-drink.
Yeah, mocktails, cocktails, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Thank you guys so
That'll be
much.
terrific.
Thank you, and congratulations. We're so happy for you.
So great.
Aren't they the best?
Love them.
They are the best.
Love them.
They really are.
I think we could have them on, once a month.
We could. We absolutely could have. We should have them on every season from that perspective. That may be something we could consider.
Yeah.
All right. So we're a year into this. We have one more guest that's live that'll come on with us here in, I don't know, about a few minutes or so. So we're a year in, Dee. What have you learned? I just asked the girls the same question. Those women the same question. What have you learned over a year?
Well, I'll speak in general terms. Okay.
Yeah.
So my number one things that I learned, Jim Rushton in the first season gave us something that has stuck with me, and I've been, doing meditation around stoicism.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, would I like to be better at it. But I love the topic of stoicism. I love the idea of it. All of the things about compartmentalizing aspects of your life. It really is about being in the moment, knowing what's important, and those kinds of things. So I'm constantly, I sent you something today on friendship and how to look at friendship and the way to look at it. It's just, it's an important part of my life. I told you perfect examples of when it worked out for me, when I was able to be present, be focused, and compartmentalize. I still need to be better at it. But it's, that's why it's a practice. So that's a big thing. And then one of the things that they said, and I love about our show is, we've had famous athletes on and we've had celebrities on, and we haven't talked about them as athletes or celebrities. We've talked about things that make them vulnerable, things that make them happy. I've mentioned this a few times. Brad Faxon didn't want to talk to us about golf. He wanted to talk about his 4 daughters. Yeah. And as a girl dad, you're a girl dad. Guys talking about their daughters is what moves you, right? Like that's important stuff. So I love the fact that all of our guests really are willing to open up. Even some of the tough guys, Ruben Brown, Rob Ray,
talking about mentoring. Rob, yes, absolutely.
So how about you?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, that there's an audience for this, right? And we thought there would be, but we're getting great feedback on that. And the audience isn't just men. It's that women want to hear men talking about this, as Laura and Colette just kind of emphasized. I think the other thing that I've really enjoyed exploring are kind of these new ideas about masculinity and what it means to be modern masculine men, and learning, I think, that some of the messages that are going out to men through the media about what masculinity is are just totally wrong, and especially how they target young men. And because we have young men in our audience also, and the idea of, never, what it means to be, brave or tough and to front. And I think the modern definition is different than that. It's about being confident and being able to be vulnerable and to set boundaries especially in relation to women with whom we are involved in all kinds of relationships, whether it is as a friend, a romantic partner, an older brother, a younger brother, a partner, a father, all of those things. I think, the idea of being confident without putting up kind of a false front is where modern men need to be to make this society happy, healthy, and safe and secure for women also.
I think the false front is important there. I think when you're referring to like the phony machismo of a man, right? I think part of that is media driven. I think the media puts that down our throats, so guys feel like they have to be like that. So I think it is important to point out the fact that you can still be a masculine man in this day and age by and by being a provider and knowing that that's your place to do that. And there are women that are fine with that. They want you to be like tough and stand for something, and not passive and wimpy. So there still is a place for a masculine man without being macho.
That's right. Without diminishing women, without diminishing other men.
Well, that's the insecurity, right?
For sure.
Yeah, and yeah, that's
the false front.
That's the false front. Right?
Whereas a truly masculine man steps into that masculine. Morgan Rich talked about this at the end of season 4. The idea, he called it sovereign masculinity, and that by being sovereign in your masculinity, you give a woman the opportunity to feel safe and lean into her femininity, which helps the entirety of the relationship.
That's a really good point, right? Like, that's the leaning into the femininity, letting them be a woman and not have to battle you.
That's right.
Not have to match your masculinity. Let them be a woman. At the end of the day, that's what they want. Most women want to be women.
Yeah. Why don't we have our other guest here start to come up here? Why don't you come up
and join us in here?
But the
Mr. Mark.
The last thought I have is about the year is, as we were talking with Colette and Laura, is just how much I've learned, how much we've learned from the variety of guests that we've had, athletes, artists, authors, etc.
Yeah, I think. Oh my gosh, if you go down the line, we've had authors: Morgan Ridge, Craig Cann, Tim Johnson, Danny Heinsohn, Mark Middleton, Marcus Ogden. We've had movie writers and producers: Marcus Allen, Nick Bakay, Gary Goldstein. So if you're looking for episodes, we've got a whole lineup of them. Athletes we talked about: Ruben Brown, Annika, Brad Faxon, Rob Ray, Marcus Ogden again, Scott Kelsey. We had a lobbyist turned consultant, Nick Warner. We had sports executives like the Commanders VP, Jim Rushton, and Pete Hassan, who worked for the Blackhawks for a lot of years. Friends and former colleagues. And one of one. The only stand-up comic we had this year.
Well, the only lawyer, certainly the only lawyer turned stand-up comic.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess Nick Bakay did some stand-up in his day, but Nick Bakay is we have an actual real stand-up comic. By the way, you are I'm going to give you top 5 Instagram follows now. You're doing an amazing job there, Mark Christopher.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job.
All right. Your producer just told me to be quiet for 3 minutes, so I'm not going to be able to answer that question or acknowledge that compliment. I'm teasing. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Good to see you, my friend. How have you been? Since you were on, about 3-4 months ago?
Something like that. You might have the dates there in your.
Yeah. So what are your observations kind of about the second half of 2024? It seems rife for a good comic mining.
It's interesting to see comics kind of engage politically and sort of break into factions. Comics have traditionally had something to say about the events of the day, but now it seems one of the things that I've noticed happening, and a little bit more on one side than the other, and I won't really, say which, is you have political personalities sort of like calling out comedians and saying, hey, comedians of the world, you need to be talking about this.
Yeah,
and,
really.
Which I find is very, very strange. And I don't necessarily rise to the bait there, but I've noticed that's one thing that is kind of happening. And I guess it can't help but happen given the oft discussed kind of divisions in our society that along every lines, you have athletes who are much more keen to put their political affiliations on their sleeves these days.
Oh, yeah.
And that in the past, it's natural that it would happen with comedians as well. So.
Well, it's interesting to me. I'm actually going to mention somebody, and I don't know if you're a fan or not, but Bill Maher went from being like this uber liberal left wing sort of, very, very vocal left winger, and he's really like, I think he's one of the ones you're talking about that the left is now offended by his reality, that he actually is pragmatic and makes sense, and he's not as freakishly far left as he used to be, and it's intelligent. What he says is like actually smart comedy, and I think it's offensive to people, and it's shocking to people.
So there are. I wasn't necessarily thinking about him, and again, I'm not going to put.
Yeah, we don't have to.
It's
just something.
But it's interesting, and probably particularly for people our age who you always remembered Bill Maher as being kind of like a. You could imagine he voted Democrat most of the time, but there were some libertarian leanings in there.
Very libertarian. Yeah.
Yes, and now I think if you're going to characterize him as like, where is he in the political landscape? He is like a middle-aged scold of liberal excesses, I think. And there are a lot of people who kind of fall into that camp who are self-described liberals, but they think of like, I was a liberal in the 1970s and the 1960s and the 1980s.
I was a Bill Clinton.
I was not, I was not part of the Reagan coalition.
Right.
But now I'm not part of whatever, is considered to be liberal. And I'm running afoul of, I would not be admitted into I would not be the cool kid on a college campus.
I remember that we said you stay away from that though. You do really, and your comedy is very straightforward, and it's not straightforward is the wrong word, but you don't get into the political.
It's not political.
I do, but only to the extent that I hope by the time I drop anything political, it's clear that it came out of the punchline came first, and then I realized, okay, well that happens to cut very, very hard against the Republicans, but it's a good joke, and then I might have something that cuts very, very hard the other way. So,
by the way, if you're in our audience and you're somebody who is angry at Bill Maher and people who would support Bill Maher, it's Dennis with two N's.
Right,
so
exactly.
Not Josh who said it. That's a joke. And not funny, because you're the funny guy here, Mark. How do you when we had the first conversation with you a few months ago, we talked about your story more than we talked about your comedy. We talked a little bit about your comedy and some of that. How do you work discussions like the ones that we had, topics that are kind of all about male vulnerability or about journeys and stories like that into the act?
So it's interesting. I think I think of myself, and I think a lot of people our age do, you hit a certain age and you kind of like, you have to accept the frailties of your body and you have to accept your responsibilities in the world, but also, you feel like I think 32 is sort of the age where people are like, okay, I'm only going to get older than this to the extent that the world requires it of me, or that it's undeniable as I'm getting out of bed to go to the bathroom for the third time at 3:30 in the morning. And when I do, my plantar fasciitis make sure that I'm not going to be able to get back to sleep again for 20 minutes. But a lot of this, when I sit down to write, I'm still going back to the stuff that a much younger comic might have gone to. So I'll talk about things that happened to me as a child and stories that, because as you get older, I think unless you want to talk about that, I got married and I'm having kids and my body is breaking down stuff, which I start to find a little bit tiresome from comedians our age. Your individual experience starts to branch off the older you get, but you can always go back to that school stuff, the childhood stuff, and the certain dynamics that are largely the same or the same for a larger group of the audience, up till a certain age where everybody sort of goes their separate ways and you have kind of unique experiences that grow out of your career. So, I mean, I would say that if my material is the material I could have done 20 years ago and similar to what I would have done. Maybe that, naturally, I'll be the first to admit I'm in a state of arrested development psychologically and emotionally. But I think it works for me comedically.
The cool thing for you is you're getting a lot of reps. I saw you were up in New York. I mean, you seem like you're working a lot, which is great for a comedian. And when you think about the fact that I know you did it early and you're getting a late start.
Yeah, I'm getting a late.
I guess reps are kind of important, right?
Yeah, well, I just say, the actuarial tables do not favor my, my ascent to stardom. And so, yeah, when somebody else is talking about, just taking a night off and going out for drinks with friends, I'm like, well, this is maybe my chance to, you can be the hare and I'll be the tortoise that just gains half a lap on you when you didn't even realize I was working.
Right.
I come back the next night and I've written 2 new minutes and, I'm not nursing a hangover and I've got that extra rep under my belt. So yeah, that's certainly part of my mindset.
What was the New York thing like? Just take us, you kind of went into the den. I think I saw some of your posts. Like I'm in the den.
I went up. I didn't kind of follow through as much on the Instagram posts as I had intended to, but I wanted to kind of post some things were like, all right, this is what it's sort of like to come from another scene and to try to like get your foot in the door at clubs in New York. So I went down to Greenwich Village in the area around the Comedy Cellar, and the Comedy Cellar, many people know, but if you don't, whenever you see a comedian on stage and there's that brick wall and that very iconic, which you usually only see half of because of where the camera's positioned, kind of like a stained glass style, like mosaic sign, that's the Comedy Cellar. And that's sort of mecca of comedy, or at least of North American comedy. So there are all of these clubs that have sprung up around the Cellar, some that are sister clubs at the Cellar, and some that are really just lower level but overflow clubs. So I was there performing at a place called the Grizzly Pear, and I'd met the owner there a couple of times. So I stopped and had a chat with him as they were doing a remodel, and just got some stage time at various places around there. But it's a very heady atmosphere. I walked in, I bumped into some old comedy friends of mine from back in the day in San Francisco, and they were about to go into the Cellar, or one of them was going into the Fat Black Pussycat, which is the sister club of the Cellar. So, it's fun to be there. It's like,
that's cool.
How much of that is in your 2025 plans? What other observations do you have about what might be coming in 2025?
So one of the big things, part of my 2025 plans involves something that's happening right at the end of 2024. I am this is the 10th year of a statewide comedy competition called the Florida's Funniest.
That's fantastic.
And it starts off with maybe 200 or some comedians, even more submissions to participate. And then there are about 12 preliminary rounds and then 2 semifinal rounds. And now we're down to the very final round, which is going to be December 15th in the Dania Improv. And here's the big closer, which you probably have figured out. I'm in the finals.
Yes.
One of 12.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. One of 12 comedians. Again, that's December 15th at 7 o'clock. It's a Sunday. And so the winner of that, one of the big prizes, and for someone who's in my position, probably the biggest prize is you get paid work at all of the clubs that participate in the competition. So if a club has hosted a preliminary round, the winner will get probably a feature week, like a week as a middle act at one of the participating clubs. So that includes clubs in Sarasota and Orlando, on the Gulf Coast, as well as like the Miami Dania Improvs as well. So
I think I might have a joke for you for that. I'm just going to give you the parameters of it. It's not going to be funny. You're going to turn it into a joke. Any of the men that are there were dragged there by the women because it's an NFL Sunday and it's a really important time of year on a Sunday. So there's a lot of big games on that day, and you're going to see guys. And I don't know what the punchline is there, but most of the guys, it's either going to be all women or women
guys who aren't football fans.
Are there such?
I know there's not. So it's all women is the point. Yes.
Yes. So
no, I don't know. It's something there.
Yeah. If you're, if you're a woman in the crowd, I'm an ally, and if you're a man who just didn't realize that it's a Sunday, I'm forgetful as well. So my sympathy. Well, fine. That is a good observation. I was thinking of just going over there because I know they got their Christmas decorations up and doing a little reconnaissance. Like, what is it that I might notice that I can comment on, making it seem as though it's off the cuff.
Right.
that will give me that, like, anything to get that little edge.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that might be one of the things.
but that's
too,
one
so
of the
it's-
things, of course.
Yeah. An NFL Sunday when you're having a comedy show at 7:00. But no, but all good. It's awesome to watch you, and it's really fun to see your career flourishing on the back nine and doing what you're passionate about. I think your story. We talked about some of our great memories of this season, and what mine are. Like when we talked to Carol Negrelli, one of our former colleagues, and what she's been able to do on the back nine in playing the harp, I believe, and just people who have like found what's really important to them professionally, personally, like what they really enjoy. Like that's I'm still looking for it. I actually was joking. I said today, I think I'm going to get a drum set.
Is that weird? If that's what brings you joy, right? And when you lean into it, Mark, and this is certainly true for you, it feels like you're blowing up, and so it's really great to see that.
There you go.
It feels like it to us. I hope it feels like it to you.
He's talking about the way my gastrointestinal system is responding to the Mexican food. This has got nothing to do with my career. Thank you. I'm glad it appears that way. I spend a lot of time curating my videos to make it seem I'm much more successful than I am. But thank you, I appreciate it.
No,
And,
awesome.
you're
So
welcome
one more
anytime.
plug for your
Yes,
show.
please.
One more. I was joking about the NFL thing. Please go see him. One more plug for your
Right.
show. It's and you get in free, right?
Yes.
With
So
the QR code.
anybody who would like to come out to the show, it's the Dania Improv, which is at Dania Port. If you're in South Florida, it's where the old wooden roller coaster used to be, right there off Griffin Road. It's Sunday, December 15th at 7 p.m. And go onto the Dania Improv website and use the promo code FFC, Florida's Funniest Competition, FFC.
And then how do you win?
So there are going to be judges, one of whom is going to be Renee Hart, the owner of the club and the organizer of the Florida's Funniest Competition. All blessings and praise be upon her. As well as it. We don't know who's going to be, but it's usually some very experienced comedians, club bookers, things like that. Like people who know their stuff. So they, of course, take into account the audience response. Nobody's going to win if the audience just is moaning through the whole through the whole set. But the judges do have the final word. But yeah, FFC will get you in for free. It's normally a $20 ticket. I can't do anything about the 2-drink minimum, but I probably wouldn't be inclined to anyway. Just have a couple of drinks.
And you want people drinking
Exactly.
for sure.
Also, bring a jacket because it does get chilly in there. Think of if you've been in South Florida, imagine the coldest restaurant or movie theater you've been in, and then dress for that.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the bad comics, like
But these
the
are
ones that
these are the
flop.
finalists.
These
the
should
finalists.
all of them should be
Everybody,
Everybody be
everybody
good. Okay.
should be very, very funny.
Okay.
And yes,
You will be because you
You
are.
will.
And I promise you, I will be. Certainly.
Thanks,
All right.
man. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
being here
guys.
and celebrating with
Thank
us.
you guys for
We
having me.
appreciate you.
And you guys are
Thanks,
blowing
brother.
up as
Stick
well.
around and have a.
Yeah, have some
Absolutely.
more Mexican food.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've held on to my ticket. Thank you.
Yeah,
guys.
good. Thanks.
Boy, we're coming to the end already.
We are.
We can go
He's
as long
great.
as we want, though. Actually.
He's great. The thing about an audience like that, I read one time about a comics convention. So the comics are performing for other comics, and that's not a great audience because comics don't laugh at other comics. They just say, "Hey, that's funny."
Yeah.
So that momentum that one would build, we're getting a lot of energy off of our audience. I think comedians do get energy off of their audiences.
Right.
So that's a little bit tricky.
Right. I did want to say, let's put a kind of a wrap on the year.
Yes.
And talk about one more thing.
Yeah.
That is the episode with our dads. The two-parter, right? Like, we think about why we do this and what we're doing it for. And, it was kind of midway through the year. It brought it all together for me. Like, the back nine is about the things you learned from your parents on what to do, but also, as we talked about, some things you don't want to do that they did. And I thought we learned so much from them, and we continue to do it. I constantly go back to that episode and think about the things that our dad said. It was a great time. It was a great time to get the four of us together. It never would have happened. Like things like this that we get to do. You and I seeing each other once a month.
Yeah.
Those are the special memories I have. It's not just in the podcast studio. I love our podcast studio time, but how many extra things have we been able to do together? The amount of time that you've spent with my now wife that you wouldn't have spent with her before we got married, and the great times that we've had with Marty. Like, it's just all of the stuff that this podcast has brought together go way beyond the 40 minutes we're in the studio.
You know, the other side of that too is not only are we talking about the stuff that we learned from our fathers, but also the stuff that we pass now on to the next generation and our children. Now, we don't have boys, we have girls, but it's still the same. There's still obviously a very important role for fathers to play there. And so it has helped me frame thinking about that in a different way as well. So at this time, at the end of every season, we do a couple of things. We do some gratitude and we do a toast. So we'd like to call out to our audience to get ready, get their drinks ready for a toast. And maybe Roy, you can help just let everybody know that we're going to be doing that. But let's start, before we do the toast, because you'll do the toast, let's start with some gratitude. The first thing I want to do is thank Taco Tuesdays. Mauricio and Robin and their staff are fabulous. The tacos are flippin' amazing. It's epic Mexican food and hospitality here in Delray Beach. So that's one. Two, I'd like to thank our guests today, all season, of course, all year, but our guests today, Eric Goodman, Colette Fair, Laura Bowman, and of course, Mark Christopher here at the end. It means so much that they came in and joined us here.
Oh, yeah.
Our sponsors, you know, over the course of a year, we've had a couple of different ones. It's been Pete Learning. It's been Goodman Global. It has been Bushwood Spirits, which we're about to use for our toast. It has also been Three Bridges. So we've had wonderful, wonderful sponsors throughout the year, and we're certainly looking forward to engaging them and others in the year ahead. Our incredible production team.
Oh my gosh! Shout out
fabulous
to Janine.
Janine
We get a round
Stella,
of applause for
who's
Janine
amazing.
and Roy. We love them
spinning the
so
dials
much.
for us tonight
Thank
and
you so
all
much,
year.
you guys.
Her husband
You guys are
Roy,
the
who
best.
often helps out and is helping
Absolute
out tonight.
best.
The rest of our associate producer Olivia, our editor Tom, and our audience, all of you, not only those who have joined us in person, but those who are joining us and listen or watching now on Facebook Live and Instagram Live and have joined us all year. You know, they've sustained us, right? They have affirmed for us that we are making an impact and that there is an audience for this. And so we're appreciative of them for that. And the people who joined us tonight, you know, they've made it an unforgettable night.
Yeah.
And there's the promise that many, many more of these are going to be there as well. So we're incredibly grateful to all of you, our guests who've joined us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. And I'm grateful for you. And we're going to raise our glasses. Thank you to Bushwood Spirits. And cheers. Our 1 year anniversary, the end of season 5, and onward and upward. Cheers, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So with that, everybody, let's drink this first, and then I have one more thing to add. So, that's good. Bushwood Spirits. Which one is this? Is it the long ball?
Long ball.
The long ball.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Thank you, Brad Carpenter.
All right. So my question to you: you up for another year?
Yeah, let's do it. I think
You guys
we're
up for
gonna do
another
it.
year? We're in for another year, and it starts with fresh episodes coming up on the 17th, right? As we get into year 2,
Yep.
season 6 of The Back Nine. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.